Hello, my name is Craig Smith, Head of Education for Minerva Elite Performance, and I'm joined by my friend and colleague.
Andrew Arkley, founder and director of Purple CV.
And this series is Joining Civvy Street, top career tips now you're getting out. We've just discussed translating military terminology and acronyms for civilian employees to understand, because we all said that's a minefield for that HR director or recruiter reading your CV. In this particular episode, we're going to be looking at optimizing LinkedIn as a serving member or veteran of the armed forces. Right. This topic is very close to my heart, Andrew, because
Mm,
I speak to a lot of people from the veteran community and serving who are talking about LinkedIn. They think LinkedIn
mm.
might be the be all and end all to getting that civvy job that pays them their worth, and they've just got to get networking on LinkedIn. That's the thing I hear all the time. Get on LinkedIn, get networking. Well,
Mm.
what the hell does that mean? I suppose is a great start. How do you network on a platform? So my first question really is, what's LinkedIn designed to do from a I want to get a job perspective, from your stance point?
Yeah, so I guess two elements to it really. Number one, it's a professional networking platform. So it's
Hmm.
a fantastic way in which to network with colleagues, peers, customers, clients, whatever, or obviously potential recruiters as well. But it's become so much more than that. It's a way of validating any application that you're making. So there is a statistic out there which says 70% of recruiters now, when they receive an application, the first thing they'll do is look at your LinkedIn. So having a LinkedIn profile is very important, and making sure that profile is up to date and matching your CV is also important, because this potentially could be a red flag. Imagine looking at a CV and then the information doesn't match on your LinkedIn. That could be a cause of concern. So yeah, in answer to your question, a great platform for networking, a great platform for discovering potential jobs, but also being discovered by recruiters, and also it's a platform which many recruiters now use to validate your application and your experience from your CV.
All right, I'm going to ask a couple of really silly questions, but I reckon you're the man to answer them for me. How
Mhm.
important is your profile picture? Do you need to be in a three-piece suit with a backdrop of like a boardroom, looking super stern, but like you're going to take over the world, or can you afford to have a bit of personality in it, do you think?
Yeah, I think that probably my tip would be a friendly passport photo. So,
Okay.
passport photos are pretty stoic. You don't tend to smile too much, but no, something personal, but at the same time professional. So, head and shoulders up, or even probably half your body or your full body, but making sure you're in a professional attire is pretty important. But at the very least, make sure it's not a picture of you having a beer on Benidorm Beach. It needs to be professional. It needs to be, there for what you're trying to do, which is to get a job. So yeah, making sure that's considered at all times.
Yeah, you heard it here first, everyone. No pictures of those work nights out when you're on tour. They won't fly,
Exactly.
especially in the professional world. Um, so, with when you look at LinkedIn, I mean, one of the things I notice is people say, they network on there, and they. So, is there benefit to say, I'm a person in the Royal Navy who's looking to get out in the next 2 years. I'd really love a role in logistics, because
Mm.
that's similar to the role that I had inside the military. Is there value to finding logistics companies, following them, commenting on the pages? Because obviously, one of the things I found out, not that I use LinkedIn very often, but you can visit an organization and then see who works there and connect with people. Um,
Absolutely.
is that a bit predatory? Is that assumptuous? I mean, is that something you think is okay to do?
No, I think that's absolutely fine to do. I think we need to make sure that our LinkedIn profile is completely relevant to what you want to do. So if you want to go into logistics, then start to build your persona on LinkedIn around logistics. Reaching
Okay.
out to someone, whilst your LinkedIn profile is not up to date, not conducive of applying to logistics,
Mm,
chances are is that they'll just decline your invite. So we want to make sure that our profile, in terms of the actual profile itself, but also the activities that we're undertaking on LinkedIn, are relevant to what you want to do. And if they are, it means that when you do send out an invite to someone and they check out your profile and they can see your commenting, reposting all around the ecosystem of the industry that you want to go into, they're going to see value in being connected with you. So in answer to your question, absolutely, but we need to make sure our profile and the activity that we're undertaking on this platform are all very relevant to to what you want to go into.
It's interesting you put it that way. I suppose if you were to go on another platform like an Instagram or a Facebook and you were to look at someone, you tend to get a flare of their personality based on the things they've shared, the
Yeah,
hobbies they appear to have. Where what you're saying is really, because LinkedIn is a professional platform, I should get a real sense and flavor of who that person is and where they want to go based on what it is they're sharing, what it is they're talking about.
absolutely, and it's about trying to convey your passion for what you do. So, many people on LinkedIn use it like Facebook or use it like Instagram. It's not recommended. Don't go and put, tons of personal pictures on there. It only has so much relevance. So make sure, when you start on LinkedIn, try to understand what your strategy is and why. Many people will go on LinkedIn and don't understand what their strategy is. They don't understand, okay, this is my plan for engaging within the industry that I want to work within. You go in with a clear head and a very clear strategy and say, right, my idea, my purpose of being on LinkedIn is in order to get a job. That this is my primary purpose right now. How do I do that? By doing X, Y, Z, by posting a certain amount of times per week or per month, and stick to it. It's an algorithm at the end of the day. So if we're consistent, you're going to get rewarded for that in terms of exposure. And when you get exposure on LinkedIn, it means that people will reach out to you. It means that you'll come to the top of their feed when talking about a particular topic. And as a result of that, you may get approached for opportunities.
Oh, I'm learning stuff today. Fantastic. Thank you very much. Andrew, how can you stand out on LinkedIn when you're applying directly for roles on LinkedIn using like the job section, etc.?
Yeah, no, it's a really, really good question and a very valid one. So I think it just really goes back to your profile. Your profile, similar to your CV, needs to be tailored. Arguably, it probably will be a little bit more generic because when applying for, you're not going to update your profile every time you apply for a job. But if you're applying within a particular industry, which I'm sure you are, then we need to make sure our profile is completely geared towards that, both in terms of the profile and that engagement piece that we talked about a second ago.
Yeah.
So your profile being relevant to the job that you're going for on LinkedIn is the biggest and best tip for you.
Andrew, a bit of a behind the scenes question for you, something I've often considered myself. When
Mm.
you're applying for a role on LinkedIn, you can see like the HR director is the one who's posted it, or you can see they're the recruiter. Is there any validation to connecting with that person or private messaging them for an informal conversation? What are your feelings around that?
Yeah, yeah, it's a really good question. I think that there's many nuances in that. Number one, you should probably follow them. So on LinkedIn, when you go onto a profile, you'll hopefully have the ability to follow that individual.
Hmm.
So by following them, it means that we're not connected, but we're going to follow them so we can see all their updates and whatever the case may be. It means that if that recruiter is using Sales Navigator or want to dive deeper into your profile, they're going to see that you're following them.
Yeah.
And that's kind of, saying that they're interested in the recruiter, but they haven't gone as far as connecting. Because in theory, connections should be people that you know. And in reality, you don't know them personally. So I'd say the first matter, of course, is to follow that recruiter. If you apply and you don't get any response, then probably, yeah, do consider a connection, because when you do connect with someone, you'll often get a box or a prompt to say send with a note or send without a note. So always send it with a note, and take that opportunity as a follow-up for the job that they've posted, right? So
Mm.
send it with a note and say, look, I made an application a week or so back. I want to use the opportunity to connect. I'm interested in the field that you work within and the company that you work for. I would love to connect and use this opportunity to ask whether you've received my application successfully. So yeah, just to recap, probably follow the individual and then potentially consider, especially if they're a second connection, reaching out to connect with them in a week or so's time.
Thank you. Andrew, do you have any top tips for job searching on LinkedIn? Is there any sort of like ways you can maximize how easy that is for me who's searching for roles?
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, the key thing there is to be as part of as many relevant networks as you can. So when you're part of networks or companies, that means that your feed. So when you log in, it means that any updates from those networks or companies are going to come up on your feed. So similar to what you said earlier, Craig, being part of those particular communities, the same thing applies when it comes to jobs. So if you're interested in particular employers or particular companies, make sure you follow them because they may not have jobs now, but in 2, 3, 6 months, however many months or whatever the case may be, if they announce a job, it might be that it's standard practice for that company to announce that on LinkedIn. And if you're not following that company, it means that it's not going to come up on your feed. So use that opportunity to follow as many companies and networks as you can within reason, because obviously we don't want to drown out any real opportunity. So that your feed comes up with any potential opportunities, and use the search item in LinkedIn. That search box at the top of LinkedIn.
Yeah.
It's pretty clever. Search jobs in whatever location, and you're going to get thousands of results that possibly will spark your interest, or at the very least allow you to dig in further to particular networks or employers that you didn't know of before.
Brilliant. Thank you very much. So, Andrew, when on your LinkedIn profile where you've got the project section where you can put some of the things you've done and the careers you've had, a lot of people obviously put a lot of detail into there. First part of
Yeah.
this question is that worth doing?
Yeah, absolutely. I think the only caveat is just don't do any overkill, right? So yeah, but utilizing, in my opinion, utilizing every section possible on your profile, absolutely. Those sections are there for a reason. We just want to make sure that the content is relevant as to why you're on LinkedIn. So if your purpose on LinkedIn is to get a job or find opportunities, then making sure that the content on your profile is completely relevant to that industry. And in terms of recommendations, absolutely, recommendations, go for it. Just make sure that those recommendations, where possible, when you're soliciting those recommendations, are objective as possible. So if you're reaching out to peers or people that you've worked with, try to prompt them on saying, look, I would love a recommendation, but love a recommendation around this particular
Yeah.
topic, or when talking about the capacity that we worked with them. Because having a recommendation of saying, I worked with Dave, he's a really nice guy, and we went out for beers every Friday, it is not really going to add value to your profile. So try to prompt that person to say, look, I'm looking for roles within the industry. Given that we know each other well, I'd really welcome a recommendation around this particular topic, or particular capacity that we worked within, just to try and give as much flavor as we can to those recommendations. Because having 5 really great recommendations is a lot better than having 50 which are very generic and very don't really give value to who you are.
Well, I'd love a recommendation from you, Andrew, about my ability to ask
Oh,
questions in an online series. So,
absolutely.
yeah, after this, we'll jump on LinkedIn and update each other's recommendations.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Right, I got a question to kind of finish us off with, but before that, it was largely around when you're using LinkedIn, especially as a person who's in the well, it's not really a question, it's more of an observation, something that I've noticed.
Mm,
Um, there are forums and groups within LinkedIn that are specifically set up for veterans and those that are transitioning in and out. So a couple that are worth mentioning are the Gen Dit, Job Oppo, and there are many others. They're just two that I've
mm.
happened to work with in the past. where they are forums and networks of people who are in the exact same boat as you. So if
Mm.
you're listening to this and you are, in that position that you're transitioning out, join some of those forums. They're really useful, and people help each other in there. I've witnessed people kind of signpost each other to job opportunities. So please do that. But my final question for you, Andrew, is a bit like we did in episode 1, which is top tips kind of thing around just CV. All right, I'm getting out. I start LinkedIn profile. Give me 3 things that would be a really strong start. We'll assume a good picture is one.
Yeah, a good picture, a very, very strong about section. So
Hmm.
highlighting your transferable skills and career goals within that about section.
Yep.
Similar to what we said with CVs, making sure that the language within your LinkedIn profile can be translated into a role that you desire, and immediately start to build a network.
Okay.
LinkedIn is one of those things that, the longer you leave it, the more difficult it is to build your network, right? So
Hmm.
start to build a network immediately with recruiters, potential employers, and industry professionals. There's many, many more tips that I can give you, but they're probably my top 3. And realize that LinkedIn is an algorithm. So I'll put, one of your purposes on LinkedIn is to get exposure. So if
Yep.
you set up a profile and, similar to a website, building a website is one thing, trying to get traffic to that website is another. And it's exactly the same on LinkedIn. So if you build an amazing LinkedIn profile, but don't do anything with it, nothing is going to happen. You need to nurture that profile. And the way that you'll nurture it is through engaging with those networks. So there's many ways that we can do that. We can comment on posts, we can repost posts, we can like them, do whatever the case may be. And that goes back to my point earlier, which is just have a very clear strategy. It might be that you turn around and say, right, I've set up a profile. My tip would be, don't go all in at the beginning because it is exhausting. If you
Mm.
say to yourself, I'm going to do a comment every day, I'm going to like a post every day, and I'm going to repost every day. After 2 or 3 weeks of doing that, from starting with nothing, you're going to get tired. You're going to
Yeah.
stop. So start off with something realistic and say, you know what, I'm going to comment on one post every week. Going back to logistics, I'm going to find a post that's popular on logistics, and I'm going to make a comment on it. It's going to be constructive. It's going to be professional. I'm also going to like one post, and I'm going to repost one post.
Mm.
So that's 3 things you can do every week. And by doing that, it's just going to tell the algorithm that you're passionate about what you're posting about or commenting about. And immediately it's going to start to build that exposure for your profile. And then hopefully, within 2, 3, 4 weeks, you're going to enjoy it. You're going to like it. You're going to be passionate about it and get even more involved. So start off small and build up from there.
Do you know what? That's fascinating, the way you've put that. That treat your LinkedIn profile like your website, and there's an algorithm that sits behind it. If you don't do anything with it,
Yeah,
you'll get nothing from it.
exactly.
Brilliant. Thank you so much. In the next episode, we are going to be looking at education as a differentiator when leaving the armed forces or military communities.